Welcome to another edition of Legal AF Meets Court Accountability, Action, and True North. We got Lisa Graves back, and the topic du jour is what else? The leak of a highly classified internal planning document by Donald Trump's transition team. Or was it a leak? That lays out the legal principles, and not principles with a PLES. Principles with a PLES, not principles like they're governed by any type of any kind of rules or norms. They're talking about people that they're going to put in positions of power in the White House counsel's office, in the Department of Justice, up to the Attorney General, and to really be the shadow heads of all the major cabinet positions and all of the departments. It'll really be run by a bunch of lawyer sycophants and toadies for Donald Trump. And the shocking news that we just got, that number 2 on the list of potential attorney generals is Judge Aileen Cannon, who Trump put on the bench in Florida, who just a month or so ago dismissed the 40 felony counts against him, finding for the first time in constitutional history that a special counsel is an improper delegation under Article 2 of our Constitution. And so did she do it in order to curry favor with her patron and get a plum job like the United States Supreme Court or a cabinet position? It's sure starting to look that way. But there's some other scary names among who could be her deputies or who could be the attorney general if she doesn't get the job. Just the fact that she's in the mix, Lisa, has so many ramifications and domino effect about the case that's pending in Florida and what it means for the 11th Circuit, but what it means for America when the rule of law is being so challenged by Donald Trump and the people that follow him. Talk to me about what you've learned so far, because you've done some amazing research about one person in particular that I hadn't even really thought about or heard of until the report came. He could be our attorney general, which is Mr. Paoletta. Why don't you talk about what you've learned?
Yeah, thank you so much, Michael. The idea that, like you said, there's this leak, or is it a leak, of who's in the running for potential attorney general in a potential Trump administration. The fact that Eileen Cannon is on the list is really, it's sort of both shocking and on brand, in the sense of just blatant corruption and rewarding loyalists with more power, versus people who would actually be qualified. Eileen Cannon, as a former AUSA with barely any experience, less than 12 years of litigating experience, was not qualified to become a federal judge. And it was a break in longstanding tradition that she was confirmed after Donald Trump lost the 2020 election, that she was put on the bench. She never should have been confirmed to anything ever. I'm astonished that she got through. She barely got through. I think it was 56 votes for her. But obviously, as she's performed on the bench, she's performed as basically, a lapdog for Donald Trump, slowing the case down, concocting ridiculous approaches to the law, and then embracing the suggestion of Clarence Thomas, himself one of the most corrupt, in fact, probably the most corrupt justice to ever serve on the Supreme Court in U.S. history, but embracing the suggestion of Clarence Thomas that she should dismiss the case against him, the case for which Donald Trump was indicted for, taking some of our most sensitive, most important national security documents, classified, top secret, beyond top secret documents, and like hiding them in his bathroom at Mar-a-Lago, and then having his lackey butler and buddies move the documents around to keep them away from the FBI. It would be like just a really sort of slapstick comedy routine if it weren't so serious. And yet here this Judge Cannon comes in and ultimately dismisses the lawsuit, the criminal investigation, the criminal prosecution of Donald Trump, by claiming that we cannot have special prosecutors in America, even though it's been, the law of the land for decades. We've had numerous special prosecutors of both Republicans and Democrats, as well as previously the Office of Independent Counsel that was disbanded after Starr and Kavanaugh, sort of did their thing with it. But she basically will embrace any crack, what is the word, like crackpot idea, in order to help Trump. And then you see that Trump's closest buddies, including Boris Epshteyn, have put her on the list to become attorney general, a position for which she would be totally unqualified for.
Let me jump in there and unpack some of that. First, let's start with Boris Epstein or Epstein, who's the replacement for Michael Cohen as the fixer. He's that sweaty guy in a three-piece suit you see in every room when Donald Trump's being arraigned. But behind the scenes, he does, besides being indicted in Arizona and an unindicted co-conspirator in the DC election interference case, he's also busy staffing Donald Trump with criminal lawyers, getting lawyers for the co-defendants in Mar-a-Lago, like Stan Woodward representing the co-defendants there. He brought in Todd Blanche. He brought in Chris Keiss. He kind of sidelined Alina Habba from that process. And so he's been this shadowy figure in the back that has exerted a lot of control over Donald Trump related to who's going to be his lawyer. And the one of the things that came out of the reporting, Lisa, that also floored me is think about this. There is a world where the judge that presided over Donald Trump's criminal case, where he was the criminal defendant, who he also appointed to the bench, is the attorney general, and her deputy is Todd Blanche, who was the criminal defense lawyer for Donald Trump in the same case. And if it's not Todd Blanche, maybe there's an assistant who's Stan Woodward, who's the lawyer for the other defendant in the Mar-a-Lago case. And we're okay with that? That's okay with people? That's that's okay with America?
It's just criminality embraced, just criminal, like the embrace of a criminal president, with his, criminal defense attorneys in key positions of power, and his judge, in essence, the person he handpicked, not for any district court in the country, but for the district court that happens to have jurisdiction over where he lives, Mar-a-Lago, to handpick that person who was, you know, uh, you know, never served as a judge before, barely was an attorney for about a decade, to have her in that post. And then this idea that his inside man, his fixer, as you point out, has basically put her on the list of people to become the attorney general of the United States of America. It's shocking. It's horrifying. It's appalling. It's just plain wrong. And it's just symbolic of how corrupt, how corrupted the whole Trump scheme is. I'm really, I'm very concerned about what happens to people's liberties with that cast of characters that they have been talking about, including some of the other people on that list.
So let's just pull that forward. The same time period where Donald Trump is running around, obviously using dictator law for dummies, pushed onto him by people like Boris Epshteyn and Stephen Miller and different people. He starts talking about the Alien Enemies Act, the Alien Sedition Act, using martial law, violating the Posse Comitatus Act to use the American military against not foreign enemies, against American citizens. How do I know it's American citizens and it wasn't a slip of the tongue? Because he named some of the American citizens that he would put in jail and use the military against, including elected officials like Nancy Pelosi. So you got that. Then you have, in the same breath, Kash Patel, talk about unqualified for a position. Kash Patel, who's rumored to be Donald Trump's leading candidate for the CIA. And Kash Patel saying earlier in the week that, yes, on day one, we are going to, and he pointed to members of the media, we're going to jail members of the media and people that are and elected officials if we need to. Okay. And then you have the reporting. I don't know if you caught this from a week or so ago, where from insiders in the White House at the time when Donald Trump was there say they kept the book, not the nuclear football. They kept the binder away from him about what laws are at a president's disposal to use in time of like martial law and things, because they didn't want to give him any ideas. Okay, so I don't know if you saw that. Did you see that reporting? Okay. And now we're watching the people who are going to be part of the weaponized, non-independent Lord Attorney General's office, FBI, and the FBI director. If Todd Blanche doesn't get the deputy job, he's rumored to be the leading candidate for the FBI. And so, if you they're not even waiting. It's almost like Catch Me If You Can. They're not even waiting, and they're not even quietly going, let's just get elected. If we just get elected, we can do whatever the F we want. I don't know why I'm whispering on this podcast, but we can dig into it. No, it's like, hey, everybody, we're criminals and we're proud of it. Join us, follow us. The brazenness, the brass that they are exhibiting is just, but why wouldn't you, if you have a criminal mind? Why wouldn't you, given that the Supreme Court is completely feckless and the most major enabler of a criminal president that we've ever seen?
It's extraordinary. Like, I've looked into Kash Patel, and he is, again, like, I know now I sound like I'm repeating myself, but, like, literally would be the worst person to lead the CIA ever in history, and that includes, some, very concerning choices over time, including under Ronald Reagan in particular. But let's just say, like, Kash Patel is a guy who literally, and I know his name is Kash, has CASH, has cashed out, man. He had this whole
Yeah.
Donald Trump promotion routine on one of his websites, and even wrote a children's book in which he helped save King Donald, in essence, from from people who would be investigating him. Like, it's grotesque. If you want to read more,
Isn't that heartwarming for
yeah,
your
yeah.
children? Gather
Yeah, I
around,
mean, like,
children.
who would wanna teach their children that lesson, the lessons of Kash Patel and his cash machine, sort of cashing in on Donald Trump, but, like, he's so unhinged. His notion that he had,
But
yeah,
by the way, that just to lighten the mood here a little bit, did you see the meme a couple of years ago of a fake Ivanka Trump book with her on the
no.
cover? Looked just like one of her books, and the statement was, "Daddy, granddad's on a golf trip. What you tell your grandchildren when your grandfather goes to
Wow,
prison."
I did not see that. I mean, now that's a book I would buy,
Yeah,
actually, but yeah, but
yeah.
Cash's children's books, no way. We have a profile on him on a website called Project 2025 Admin. We also have a profile there on Mark Paoletta and Mike Davis, the two other guys who are two of the other people who are supposedly in the running for becoming attorney general. And they're each different characters in this drama of basically enabling Trump to do whatever he wants. But the idea that anyone who, would think that they should become the head of the CIA, which has rules, longstanding statutory restrictions on operating in the United States. Its focus is external. It's supposed to be external, although obviously we've known in some historical instances that it has operated internally. But in the post Watergate era, it's supposed to be confined to external activities. The idea that he would threaten journalists is truly appalling and revolting, and would be illegal in any normal system in the United States. But we've also seen Trump threaten, in essence, people like me and you and Alex and others with the idea that he would throw you in jail for criticizing the Supreme Court. I've read that Constitution from cover to cover. I'm certain that Donald Trump has barely read a sentence of it, if any. He certainly hasn't upheld it, despite his oath of office to uphold the Constitution from enemies, foreign and domestic, including, foreign enemies like Putin, or domestic enemies like he and his crew. But you have a situation where you have people on his list, or this list of potential attorneys general, who have been party to some of the sort of worst episodes in American history. Like Mike Davis, his role in pushing Brett Kavanaugh onto the Supreme Court, despite compelling evidence that he attempted to sexually assault Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, and the machinations that he went through in that role on the Senate Judiciary Committee to basically put someone unworthy on our highest court in the country. That should be a disqualifying act, not a qualifying act.
Yeah, Lisa, I don't know what was scarier. I almost thought like they ranked them so we would say, well, okay, I'll take Aileen Cannon, because here were my choices. Apparently, Jeffrey Clark, who, I don't care what the United States Supreme Court has to say about it. He participated in an
Yes.
insurrection, and he used the office of the Attorney General in order to try to interfere with the election by falsely claiming that there was outcome determinative fraud, by about to send letters on letterhead of the Department of Justice in order to do that after everybody else in
Yep.
leadership quit. And he was the last man standing for about 20 minutes in the remaining hours of the Trump administration. That guy should be
Yep.
in jail,
Yes.
and has been indicted, including in Georgia. Not we shouldn't be talking about him on the short list of being the attorney general. We should be talking about, I wonder which federal
Right.
penitentiary he will be
Right.
placed
For
in.
crimes.
Okay,
For crimes
right.
he's been
And so,
accused
so
of.
you got
Yep.
that guy. And then talk a little bit more because I did catch on my own research. I ran, of course, it's great. I know I'm doing well on my research when I run into Lisa Graves' own research from True North about. I didn't know anything, to be frank, about Mark Paoletta, other than I remember a guy who was standing next to Ginny Thomas and defending her when she was testifying to whatever she was doing to the Jan 6 committee about her emails to try to overthrow democracy and her conflicted role. And then as I read it, and I peeled the onion, I realized, well, he's a close friend of Clarence Thomas. And so now Clarence Thomas is going to be handpicking who the attorney general is, which will definitely defeat my number one thing, which is I want a special counsel appointed in the Kamala Harris term to go after and investigate Clarence Thomas. But putting that aside for a moment, tell us more about Paoletta. Who is he? What's the link to Clarence Thomas and Ginny? And what kind of attorney general would he be?
Yeah, Mark Paoletta sort of cut his teeth in a way in the White House counsel's office alongside C. Boyd and Gray during the George H.W. Bush administration. And so he worked on Thomas's nomination. And again, that was a nomination where Clarence Thomas had barely sat on the DC circuit before he was elevated to the United States Supreme Court. And then there was that extraordinary testimony by Anita Hill about the really grotesque sexual overtures that Clarence Thomas had made toward her. And then it turned out that there were other women who had also been subject to this harassment by the guy who was at the time leading the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission for the Reagan administration, Clarence Thomas. Unfortunately, all that testimony did not come forward in that confirmation hearing. It seems as though, and just as an aside, we looked into a group that came out of that. These women for Judge Thomas, these white women basically, who said that he'd never harassed them. Well, that may well be true. You don't have to harass everyone to be a sexual harasser, but the women he did harass were Black women, including Anita Hill. But there was Mark Paoletta, helping to get Clarence Thomas confirmed to a lifetime position on the Supreme Court. After that testimony, also at the wheel there was Leonard Leo helping to get Clarence Thomas confirmed. And so from that moment, basically, Paoletta becomes a friend of Clarence Thomas, the guy he helped get installed on the Supreme Court. And then he's been just an avid defender of Thomas in numerous circles, op-eds. He attacks reporters who dare to report on Clarence Thomas, like Jane Mayer. He's written for this rag called The Federalist that has had numerous of its claims found to be, pants on fire lies by PolitiFact. He is someone who has helped promote Thomas's vanity projects. He's the full service basically defender of the Thomases, and as you point out, was also the lawyer for Jenny Thomas as she was appearing before the January 6th committee because of the text that she was sending to Mark Meadows to try to overthrow our democracy and the rightful results of the American people voting. But the other thing I just have to say is you have a situation where the way we found that photo of Mark Paoletta and Clarence Thomas and Harlan Crow and Leonard Leo at the resort at Harlan Crow's place up in the Adirondacks was because during the Ketanji Brown Jackson hearing, this group called the Judicial Crisis Network, part of Leo's operation, said it was going to spend $1 million in ads supporting or basically attacking Ketanji Brown Jackson. When we looked into it, the ads were actually supporting Clarence Thomas. It was $1 million ad buy in the DC area to basically say Ketanji Brown Jackson doesn't like Clarence Thomas and isn't Clarence Thomas great. When we went to look into that film, that biography, that was the film where Clarence Thomas is on his RV claiming that he loves the Walmart parking lot more than the beaches. And the film is underwritten by billionaire Harlan Crow, who's been flying him around the world, taking him on luxurious yacht trips. But that's not all. The timing of that ad buy was just as Jenny Thomas had been asked by the Washington Post about those texts to Mark Meadows. So basically, this was $1 million gift that was put in play to buttress Clarence Thomas at the moment that his wife was going to be outed for her role in trying to drive that insurrection.
Yeah, I didn't know much about him, but everything I've now heard, I now hate him. for that position. But he's the darling of
but
he's the,
but not in a malice way, just in a
no, I
in a
mean it's
general
for
way.
American democracy. I don't want to see this guy anywhere near.
Yes, yes.
We're going to continue evaluating hopefully we won't have to. Hopefully we'll be able to put an end in 12 days or so, put an end to the speculation of who's going to be in Donald Trump's cabinet, because we won't have to care about that, because we will finally rid ourselves of him and not have to worry about it. Although, I don't know if you caught Chris LaSavita in his, I was just doing a hot take about him recently, and a $22 million that he's taken in from all sorts of Trump-related entities to be the campaign manager. Talk about gender pay disparity. I'm going to send a note to Susie Wiles if she wants to hire me, because she got $650,000 while the person next to her doing the same job got $22 million. You may want to give me a call. Uh, that's how Donald Trump cares about the women in his administration or in his orbit.
Oh yeah, he's the protector.
Oh yeah.
Person who's been
Oh,
accused of
women,
the
I'm your
protector. Right.
protector. Come with
Yeah.
me. I'll pay you 1/10 of what I pay the guy next to me. But
Mm.
Chris LaSavita said, this is again the catch me if you can. I'll just say shit out loud. He said it to the Politico interview on the Republican National Convention that the date for them to keep fighting through is not Jan 6th. It's Jan 20th, when as the hand is hovering over the Bible, and they feel they can fight and try to steal the election all the way through there. I mean, those are sobering
Yeah.
words.
Horrifying.
Yeah, but again, we
Yeah.
got to be, I'll just say it out loud. We got to be not as ruthless as them. We got to be ruthless in our defense of democracy. We've got to be brass knuckle in our fighting to protect our constitutional republic against all enemies, foreign and domestic, including ones that are running under a campaign flag.
Yeah, I mean the fact that's right. We have to be absolutely determined, unwavering in defense of our democracy and this republic.
Absolutely. So we're going to continue to do that. One of the ways we're going to do it here on the new Legal AF YouTube channel. Yep, you're here. Early voting has started. Hit the subscribe button. Bring other people to do it too. It's remarkable, since Court Accountability, they were there with us when we were. It wasn't even the first floor. We were in the basement of this. I forget the numbers we were at the time. I don't know, maybe 100,000. We just hit 250,000. We're hitting 12 and 13 million views. We've been up and running for 34 days, and that's because of your help. Help us get to 350,000 in the next month, and then we go from there. And part of it is, well, I think you're coming here to see content, and people like Lisa Graves and Alex Aronson and Court Accountability Action, who are doing some amazing work here. Just look for their playlist. And it's this type of expose and shining a bright spotlight on these issues that are really, really necessary. And I thank every day that you guys join forces with us here on Legal AF. So until our next hot take, our next crossover episode of Court Accountability Action Times Legal AF, I'm Michael Popok with Lisa Graves. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel, where I'll be curating the top stories, the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.